I got control on my true collectible. Famous, number one, desirable. I do what I want when I want and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air. That's how I roll. I got control on my true collectible. Famous, number one, desirable. I do what I want when I want and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air. That's how I roll. I got changes, so I don't care about no gold. Better, so much better if it's been incredible. Always on the show, so they know that I still got it. And I never feel sorry, yeah, top of the world.
Hey Untamables, this is author and poet Kiana Dene. I just wanted to send some love to Untamed in this Get Caught Up podcast with Writer Wednesdays. These tips are amazing. They are definitely very relevant in not only the author world, but the business world. And please follow and listen to this podcast and get your life together with branding, with promoting yourself, marketing, everything. All these Writer Wednesdays tips are the perfect jumpstart into making yourself promotable, making yourself marketable, and making yourself professional. So I'm sending you all love and ink.
And now, here is your host.
It's time for hashtag Writer Wednesday with Crystal. Tips offering advice to aspiring, new, and seasoned authors about all aspects of the literary world. We are presented by Untamed Publishing. Allow us to help you unlock your unlimited writing potential. If you are an aspiring new or seasoned author, head over to www.untamedpublishing.net for a variety of services to assist you on your publishing journey. I feel like I haven't been here for a while, and that's because I did take a break last week, but I'm back. And on this episode, I'm going to talk about how to write a query letter that works, okay? Now, if you want to pursue a traditional publishing deal, then the first thing you need to do is to get a literary agent. Like it or not, agents are the gatekeepers in the publishing industry, as most publishers will not accept manuscripts from an unagented authors. So, how do you get an agent? Well, one way is to go to a book conference and meet one and try to talk to them face to face. Many times, agents will tell authors they meet at such conferences and workshops that they can send them their manuscript afterwards. Okay, so tonight, I'm going to talk about what is a query letter, what should you do before you write a query letter, how do you write a query letter, things to avoid in your query letter, how to send your query letter, what else goes in your query letter, besides the letter. Should you follow up after sending a query? And another way to use a query letter. If you lack the ability to get to Writers Conference, then you'll have to do what most authors do. Query an agent via email or through a form like Query Tracker. In either case, an agent will require a query letter. Now, let's talk about what is a query letter. Although the contents of query letters are fairly standardized, writing a query letter that gets results is an art form, one that requires practice and feedback. And before we define what a query letter is, it is important to state this. Agents do not want you to send them a full manuscript right off the bat. If you send an unsolicited manuscript, an agent will not read it. They get too many queries from authors every day, and they don't have time to open a random manuscript and start reading it. Instead, they want to know who you are and what your book is about. In short, they want to know if they can sell your book, hence the query letter. Now, a query letter is simply a brief introduction. It quickly gives the agent the information they need to decide if they think they can sell your book, if they are interested in you and your book. They will contact you and request either a partial or full manuscript. Okay, so I think that's like pretty basic explanation of what a query letter is. Now we're going to talk about what you should do before you write a query letter. Every agent is different. They all want different things, not just different kinds of books, but they all want different things in their queries. So before you write a query letter, do your research. Go to sites like Manuscript Wishlist and search for agents who are open to queries and actively seeking your kind of book. Once you find a bunch of these agents, go to their agency websites and make notes on what each agent wants. This will inform how you approach writing a query letter for each person. Okay, so that's kind of like self-explanatory right there. Okay, so the next one is, how do you write a query letter? There are a few standard elements that go into every query letter. However, every query letter is different. That's because every author, every book, every agent, and every situation is different. And because there is so much pressure on an author to write a perfect query letter and so much competing advice on how to do so, authors often lose sight of the purpose of this letter. So as you read on, keep in mind that the sole purpose of your query letter is to let the agent know two things. You can write and your book is marketable. That's it. Whether you lead your query letter with the plot summary or the housekeeping or important information about your ultimately doesn't matter, as long as whatever you write immediately conveys that your book is marketable and that you are a great writer. With that in mind, these are the elements that go into writing a query letter. First is the greeting. Keep it simple and informal. Use the agent's first name. Dear Anne is perfect. Important personal information. If you get the agent at a conference, this is where you should mention that. Okay, so then just if none of this is true, then proceed to the next element. So basically it said if you would say like, Dear Anne, I met you at the SCBWI conference and you suggested I contacted you after the conference was over. If you have a mutual acquaintance who is in an industry figure, this would be the best way to begin your letter. The next sample is, Dear Anne, Ruben Sawyer at Shore Publishing suggested I contact you regarding my manuscript. If this manuscript has won an award, a major award, not some local award that won't have any meaning outside of your community, this will be a great way to begin your letter. Here's another example. Dear Anne, I am seeking representation for my novel, She Knows Too Much, which won the 2024 Pre-Published Maggie Award. If none of that is true, then proceed to next element. Okay, so basically all of those examples I gave, if that's not any of them, do not pertain to you trying to get a literary agent. Next thing you would go into is housekeeping. This is a single sentence that includes your book's title, genre, and word count, rounded to the nearest 1,000. You do not have to begin your letter with housekeeping. In fact, the trend these days is to start with the plot summary and include the housekeeping as your final paragraph. But beginning with housekeeping is a perfectly respectable way to lead off a query, especially if the agent you are querying has mentioned that you are looking for your exact kind of book. Okay, so if they're saying they're looking for it, then it's okay to start off with housekeeping. But if not, then you don't want to do that. Okay, now the next thing that will go in your query letter is the book summary. This is by far the hardest part of writing a query. It's where you explain what your book is about in an succinct and compelling a manner possible. In your book summary, you need to convey who your main character is, what problem they are facing, the central conflict, and what the stakes are. Plus, you have to do all of this with strong writing that clearly expresses your voice, or at least the voice of your novel. Oh, and you need to do all of this in 200 to 250 words. But on the plus side, you do not have to explain your subplots or your secondary characters. You do not have to do any world building, though you should mention the setting, especially if you've written a sci-fi, fantasy, or historical novel. Okay? So, the next one is comparable titles, and this is optional. Believe it or not, having a book that is completely original isn't the selling point you think it is. Agents want to sell books, and it's much easier to sell a book that is similar to other books than the one that is wildly original. Think of how Amazon includes a products related to this item section on every page. If your book is kind of similar to another book or two, that's actually a good thing. As such, some agents will ask you to include 2 or 3 comparable titles, which is comps. When it comes to comps, you want to cite recent books in the last 3 to 5 years that have been successful, but not huge bestsellers. You especially want to mention books that are first novels. This also shows the agent that you know the market well. Okay, so do not cite classics. Again, do not cite classics. So no Jane Austen, Dickens, or Lovecraft. Do not cite current giants like Stephen King, J.K. Rowling, or Brandon Sanderson. If you have put your housekeeping section at the end of your query, then this is the perfect place to include your comps. Otherwise, simply add it to your letter after the plot summary. The next thing is your bio. So after your plot summary, you can either place your housekeeping, or if you already included housekeeping at the beginning of your letter, go straight into your author bio. As with your plot summary, less is more. Only include the most pertinent details. So if you won a contest, or if you have published other books, if you have a huge social media following, etc., these will be worthy of mentioning. If you have experience that leads credibility to your novel, that would be worth mentioning. For example, if you are a paramedic and your book is about a paramedic, make sure to include that. The agent is unlikely to care where you went to school or that you have been writing since you were a kid. Keep it short and sweet. Next is your closing. End your letter with, "Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, put your name." That is it. Don't go overboard, because sometimes people want to go overboard when they doing a closing. Please do not go overboard. That's too much. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is things to avoid in your query letter. So one is, do not write your query letter as if you are the main character. Okay. For example, I just wanted to live forever. Little did I know I was doomed to be forgotten by everyone I ever met. Don't do that. Okay. This is the example the article gave. They're saying don't do that. Do not start your query with a question like, what if you could live forever, but you were cursed to be forgotten by everyone you met? Don't do that. The next one, do not tell the agent they will love your book. I saw you were looking for a book about a woman who makes a Faustian bargain, so I just know you're going to love my book. Don't do that. The next one, do not mention your years of hard work. No one cares. Don't mention your age. There is no upside. Don't oversell your book. Avoid saying things like, this is sure to be a bestseller. Don't do that. And avoid cliches. This is probably the most important piece of advice. Okay, so avoid cliches. Now, when I come back, I'm going to go over, how to send your query, what else goes in your query besides the letter, and should you follow up after sending a query, and another way to use a query letter. So I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to come back, and I'm going to give you some more information on how to write a query letter that works. I'll be right back.
Untamed Publishing has partnered with Katie Creatives to present to you UP pre-made book covers. With over 200 covers to choose from, we're sure you'll find exactly what you need to fit your author needs. Just visit www.untamedpublishing.net.
And I'm back, and I'm talking to you about how to write a query letter that works. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is how to send your query. Every agent wants something different. Although some prefer to receive their queries via email, most agents these days use services like QueryChat. You do not have to be a QT member to submit a query. If an agent wants their query via email, do not include the query as an attachment. Simply cut and paste the text directly into the email. And actually, your best bet is to paste the text into a plain text editor first and then cut and paste it into the email. This should remove any weird formatting issues from your word processor. I have never seen an agent who wants to receive a physical query sent via snail mail. It's possible they exist, but if so, they are in the very small minority. Now I want to tell you what else goes in your query besides the letter. Again, every agent wants different things. Some agents will want the first 10 pages of your manuscript or the first chapter. Some agents will also want you to include a synopsis, a single-page summary of the entire book, including your plot, twist, and ending. Once again, whatever your agent wants is what you should give them. Next is, should you follow up after sending a query? Most agents will respond to your query in 4 to 8 weeks. Some agents, as infuriating as it is, considering how much time you've invested in querying them, you will never respond. Querying them will never respond. Sorry about that. So you may be tempted to follow up with them, but I wouldn't recommend it. Not because it's a breach of etiquette, even though it's often seen that way, but because for me, if an agent can't be bothered to get back to me, then I don't want them representing me. So there are a couple exceptions to this, however. So if an agent has requested a partial or full manuscript from you and you haven't heard back from them in 3 months, then it's acceptable to politely nudge them. And yes, I know 3 months seems like a long time, but welcome to publishing. If you receive an offer of representation from another agent, then yes, do follow up with an agent, especially if they are your dream agent. Give them 2 weeks to get back to you in your email. Be sure your subject line reads novel title, offer of representation. Okay, and the last thing I'm going to tell you about is another way to use a query letter. Okay, typically authors don't start writing their query letters until they finish their books, but I think this is a mistake. Because a query letter is such an effective tool for distilling your book down to its most crucial aspects. I think it's great. It's a great exercise to write a query letter before you start writing your book. After all, in order to write a successful query letter, you have to identify who your main character is, what they desire, highlight what problems they face, what the central conflict is, and what's going to stop them from succeeding, and what's at stake. These are all the things you need to know before you start writing. By writing your query letter first, you are making sure you properly understand the most important elements of your book while setting it up to get representation once you've finished. If you are struggling to write a query at this stage, then it means you don't fully understand your story, which also means you're probably going to have a hard time writing and or selling your book down the line. It's better to figure this stuff out at the beginning. I'm not saying you can't revise your query once your book is done, and I'm definitely not saying you should send your query out before your book is done. But I do want a query is a helpful tool to make, but I do think a query is a helpful tool to make sure you fully understand the story you're about to write. Okay. So this article was found on BookBaby, and definitely wanted to share it with you guys, especially if you're interested in working with a publishing company. So you definitely know you need a literary agent before you work with a publishing company, and this is just how to get this literary agent. Okay. Now, I just want to say this was actually a good article because, getting into writing now, maybe one day I might want to do this. I'm saying maybe because I don't know if that's going to happen. I just want to be able to put a book out and publish it. That's my first goal. I don't know what'll happen next. All right. So thank you for listening as always. And please check me out on Instagram at BooksandSoul1. Please be sure to follow the Get Caught Up Podcast on Instagram at Get Caught Up Podcast and on Twitter at GCU_podcast. We're also on Facebook. We have a Facebook group that is called the Get Caught Up Author Podcast. And we're also on TikTok now at the Get Caught Up Author Podcast. Check us out, follow us, like, and share. If you would like to become a sponsor, please visit anchor.fm/getcaughtup. Or if you like to give us a donation, you can send us a cash app at $U_P2016. So join us later on tonight at 9 p.m. on anchor.fm/getcaughtup when myself and author Untamed interviewed author CC Fan, and we talked to her about her book, Her Shoes, and also just getting to know her. So that will be on the Get Caught Up podcast page tonight at 9 p.m. And then also join us for our book of the month, books of the month, a book series. And that is with Aubrey Penn. And we will be talking about Remember the Time and When We Fell in Love. This is Sexual Abuse Awareness Month. So those two books do have that in a book. She wrote it tastefully. I'm such a fan of Aubrey Penn. That's my girl. I love her to death. And I definitely fell in love with those two books. I have one man that she wrote that I was not a fan of, one of her lead characters, and that was in her book, her first published book, One Final Shot. It was good. It was so good. And I have to do my review for that book. But that is her first published book. And we will be talking to her, like I said, on April the 25th, live on IG about Remember the Time and When We Fell in Love. And then join us on April 30th when we talk to Miss Zakia, who is our narrator of the month. I'm so excited to actually talk to her. I became a fan of hers when I listened to Love Belvin's The Rhyme of, because y'all, I don't ever get this right. So The Rhyme of Love, The Rhythm of Blues. She did a phenomenal job with Miles Washington. I think they are perfect together, narrating books. She was Winter, he was Raji. And then I fell in love with her again when she narrated I Want to Be Down by Ashley Nicole. And again, she was back with who I feel like that's the dynamic duo, Mr. Miles Washington. So join us for that as well. And I just want to say again, as always, thank you for listening. Bye for now.